Hello, and welcome to our Swine Chat. This is a very special Marketing Monday. We get to talk about pork and pigs and all the business stuff that goes with it. So we are really, really excited. My name is Brittany Sweeney. I am the communications manager with the Livestock Conservancy. And Pork Ryan is here today. And Tracy McCoy from Hillbilly Nutrition is also here. And we're excited to have her as our special guest. Tracy, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your business?
Sure. Hi, my name is Tracy McCoy, and my husband and I, his name is Gary, we started Hillbilly Nutrition as a brand before we had a farm, and it was an idea that we had wanting to get quality pastured meats of different varieties to local people that wanted to buy it, including ourselves. And so the brand started there. We started with just organizing different kind of cooperative buys from local farms, and slowly but surely graduated to our own farm here in Waxahachie, Texas about 4 years ago, and started raising pastured pork ourselves.
All right. Ryan, did you want to jump in with some questions?
Yeah. So first of all, everyone, my name is Ryan Curitan, aka Pork Ryan. I am the Breed Association Manager for the Livestock Conservancy. So first off, just want to thank you, Tracy, for being on here. I know we have a very new friendship since the last time I went down to Texas, which I think was it November, right? Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So we know each other that long, but we felt like a kindred spirit as we were talking about pork and business, and I was like, oh man, I have to have her on Swine Chat for Marketing Monday. So thank you for being here. I just want to really quickly get into this. For you being a fairly new farm enterprise, a new farm business, what are some things that you're learning about pricing and marketing versus like feed choices? Like, talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest things that we decided to do was raise a really quality meat, something that we loved, that we could stand behind, and we raised red wattles. So kind of having a Texas bloodline there was important to us. Also, just having a really good quality meat was really important. But in order to get that, it's all about inputs. We learned a lot when we were selling meat from other farms, asking lots of questions to the farmers, what practices they had in place, what feed choices they had. That was really important to us from the very beginning. We were looking at what we were putting in our body based on what foods we were eating and what they were eating, because we are what we eat. So nutritionally speaking, that aspect was super important from the very get-go. But when we decided to start raising pigs ourselves, of course, finding feed that was fit within the guidelines that we decided were important for us and for our pigs, something that we could afford, something we could get our hands on, something that was, something that was marketable and that we knew there was a market for. We choose to feed a soy-free, corn-free, peanut-free feed, which is not very common, very difficult to find, a lot more expensive, but buying in bulk always helps. And finding a feed mill that's close to you that mills that specific feed you're looking for, or will make a custom blend for you, is also very helpful. We have not dove into doing our own kind of blends. I know that that's a thing out there. A lot of folks are doing, soaking their grains and stretching some things that way. We've looked at it upon several occasions and just haven't really jumped in. So we're still feeding a pre-mixed pelleted feed, which we really like. We feel like the taste of our meat is sweeter. The fat on red wattle, which is super critical and important, has a really good flavor profile and doesn't feel weird on the tongue, if that makes sense. So we really like how that's worked for us so far. Now, that being said, we recently went to our processor, I guess back in late December, and they were talking about the price of some of the grains have gone up extremely high, doubled since August. And one of those being Milo, which is in our feed. We don't feed peanut, but we do feed Milo in our feed. And they couldn't figure out why. I think a lot of it, my speculation is just it's logistics and price of getting things here, whether it's coming from the Panhandle in Texas or from another state. I think we're going to see a lot of that, and we may have to decide on some restructuring or some new formula or something for our pigs because of that. We're already kind of as high as I'd like to go in that sense. So, but pricing, for us, we, like anyone should, look at the, how long you're going to raise those pigs, how long does it take to get them to market weight, how much it's going to cost you to feed them, and then setting a strategy for what markup you want and what return on your investment you would like to see. And I manage those numbers pretty closely, lots of spreadsheets and pivot tables and all that good stuff, because I like to see how much did that pig cost me? How much money can I make off of them? Is this still worth it? And of course it is, but my husband said we could make $0 and he would still do it. And I'm like, I don't know if I would do that. But, seeing where, every single cut that we get back from the processor, we list that out on a spreadsheet. I know how much my input costs were. I know how much my processing costs were. I can get my cost per pound on every single cut, and then I decide on my markups that way. And that helps me kind of see, are we being consistent? What fluctuations did we have? Is there seasonal differences? Things like that. So pricing is the most important thing. And being able to set that with some background knowledge of not just what your peers are doing, but also, what it's truly costing you to do it.
And you mentioned a really good point about looking at what your peers are doing. I come across a lot of farms and, like how'd you come up with these prices? They don't know who I am. So they're just like, oh, yeah, I'll just tell them. Because they don't know who I am. They don't know pork run. And so they'll be like, oh, well, the other farmers got it for that price. So, I just thought it'd be a good price. And so then they start asking critical questions like, oh, okay, so like, what are your costs of production? Mm-hmm. And they're like, feed is this much. I was like, okay, how much feed are you per day consuming? And what's your volume like? And like, honestly, after that, they're like, something's up with this guy, he knows too much. You bring up a good point about not worrying about what your consumers are pricing. Granted, that is important, so that way you're making sure that, how much you can charge or how little you can charge for an item, but then also seeing like, I need to focus on my cost of production. The only way I'm able to do that is by having good records. When you mentioned records, I was like,
yeah.
Yes. We need more farmers to take better records.
Yes.
Yes. If we're going to run a profitable enterprise, a profitable pork enterprise, it's so important that you take good records. And Tracy, I know for you, like pigs aren't even the only thing that you're raising. You got diversified farms. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we did. We raised lambs for the first 3 years. We actually sold our herd back in August when grass started dying really soon here in Texas. We'll probably buy some more lambs this spring and just feed them out instead of breeding them ourselves. They're not a big part of our production. We also realized very quickly that in order to get really good lamb, you got to buy really good hay in the winter. And we did that, and it was delicious. But I don't think we made our money back on that. We just ate really well for a year. So that was a decision we made back in August, that I wasn't ready to start buying hay back then. And so we did sell that herd knowing that we can, get some more babies, lambs this spring. We've done pasture chicken. We did that for the first time last year, learned a lot. My husband said it'll take some convincing to do it again this year, but I'm still working on them. And we raise pastured eggs. So we've increased our production this year on eggs. We had a flock that needed to be kind of turned over a little bit. And so I've spent the winter raising a lot of baby hens, hatching them, and getting them to where they're to the point where they're going to start laying in the next couple of months. So hopefully we can increase our egg production and egg sales for the year. And that, those are just all different ways that people can find you. If you only limit yourself to one type of animal or type of food, it's good to diversify, right? Whether it's farming and something else or several things within farming. And those are just all different ways that people find us, whether they might not be looking for pastured pork. You don't know how many people that tell me, I don't eat much pork. I'm like, really? You don't? You can
chop my pork. See how
you haven't had my pork chops yet. People always say, they say, well, how do I get some belly back ribs? I said, there's only two sets of those per pig, right? And there's only 1 35-pound belly of bacon. Let me tell you about my pork chops, and so, I'm digressing. I don't even know where we were going with this. I'm sorry. Diversification. So yeah, we've done some different meats. I think that helps. That's also helped us bridge some different gaps. Last summer, after COVID wiped us out, we had just brought home a new batch of pigs right before that. Everything kind of shut down, and it was great timing for us. We sold out very quickly of everything we had, but then I was left with nothing to sell, and those are hard months. So we kind of bridged the summer gaps with pastured chicken, and I bought some lamb and beef from a couple other farmers that I work with and that I believe in their practices, and I resell their meat. I negotiate wholesale pricing with them as if I were a storefront, and I do the marketing basically on their behalf. I will sell their beef and cook it up in my Instagram stories and show people how delicious it is and sell it just like I would my own pork. And so that also helps bridge some gaps too when things like, COVID happen, or you're waiting for your next batch of pigs to get back from the processor.
And I think you're in a really unique position and a really unique character in general, because you're actually willing to be that marketing person. There are a lot of farmers, and I've heard it all. They're like, oh, well, I like the farm. I don't like talking to people at all. And I'm like, and you're trying to get into direct consumer markets. Okay, yeah. This is totally going to work. Oh, totally. But you being able to be that bridge saying, hey, I know that you just want to focus on producing the best quality beef, pork, lamb, whatever it is, and then being able to say, let me help you.
Yeah.
You have something I don't have. Mm-hmm. And so one thing that I try to get people to understand is it's so important when you're not doing everything, right? When you can say, you know what, I don't have 100 acres of land, right? So beef market, I don't have a big beef market on my own. But I can partner with farmers that have more acreage than I do, that have a larger scale than I do, but don't want anything to do with the marketing. And then I just I give them a fair price. I'll market their meat, and it's a win-win situation. And I wish more farmers were looking for that kind of model and finding people that were willing to do the work that they're not willing to do. Because I think for you, Tracy, even when I talk to you and I see your Instagram stories, you love it. You love this marketing thing. Even if you spend all day on it, you don't care. You still love it. And so being able to see that passion from you in marketing is really encouraging, because it just reminds people that focus on your passions.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. If you show people that you love what you're doing, they're going to love watching you. I mean, whether it's an Instagram story or a newsletter or a YouTube video or whatever it is that you're doing, in order to tell your story, I think that it's important for you to have fun while you're doing it. Because if it's not fun, they can tell. I don't story on the days I'm yelling at my kids all day. You know what I mean? Like, I don't story on those days. I story on the days that I'm feeling good and we're having, doing this thing. I'm going to share this with everyone and just kind of show them a little bit about what we're doing. And there are some people that do it a lot more than I do, and there are some people that don't do it enough. And I think, you find a balance with what works with your lifestyle, and when you're able to do it. And even people that work a full-time job can still figure out ways to tell their story in small snippet, right? It doesn't have to be a 4-minute YouTube video where you're talking about something. It can be 20-second intervals on Instagram, which has been very handy in terms of marketing. I know not everyone is on Instagram, but you can kind of identify who your target market is very quickly and use hashtags and certain content in order to attract those types of consumers. And people are just very voyeuristic. They want to see what you're doing. They don't live that lifestyle. They live in a city and they have no idea how all these things work. Or I get questions all the time, and I'll tell people that, the real answer, and they're like, "Oh, I had no idea." They don't know what you don't know. And so if you just show them little things that might seem trivial to you, they're like, "Wow, that's so neat. That's so cool." Or, "How did she figure that out?" YouTube. Yeah.
And I think something that people probably don't know is you're selling to the Dallas-Fort Worth market. And I've been there a couple times. I used to live in Texas. Are y'all at 9 million people in that area, or is it more than that? Is it more than that?
I should know that number, but I don't. It's big. And Texas is huge, We do ship our meat. We started doing that in January of 2019. I'm sorry, January of 2020 was the year we launched our shipping program. And, it was great. It was great to have during COVID when no one could leave their house or, weren't able to go to the store or find meat. So it was a great year for us to do it. But I've told lots of farmers that have asked me, how profitable it is or how expensive it is to ship. It's very expensive. But if you live near a metroplex that you can tap into, and for me personally, I tell other people in Texas, I'm like, listen, we live this close with one of the biggest metroplexes in the United States. There's no reason why we can't just sell there if we wanted to, and that all goes into marketing too. How are you setting up your SEO on your website? Those are ways that people are going to find you in a local community. You can still stay pretty local on things like social media too. You just have to structure it right and decide where you want to target your audience. Is that locale just in your back door, outside your back door? Is it just your state? Is it your state and one other state? Whatever that is, like, I have customers that call me from across the country and want something. I'm like, listen, it's going to cost you way too much to get it. Let me give you a couple other farms near you. Like, there are other farms everywhere that people just don't know about because they're not on social media and they don't have a website. And they find me because they Google pastured pork and I pop up and these people are in Washington State. I'm like, let me help you. I'll tell you where to go, to find another farm. I'd love to service you, but I can help you out in a different way. So, I think if farmers would, understand or hold some more higher importance on having a platform that you can stay in touch with people, whether that's just a website or website plus social media, plus an email, campaign, all those things help attract customers in wherever your target market should be.
Y'all heard it from Tracy. Be on social media. Be on the internet. If people can't find you, what's the point? Right?
Totally. We talked about this in November. I don't know how many times I've gone to, I need more feeder pigs, or I need to find such and such. And I can't find anybody's website to save my life. I'm like, why don't these farms? So then I'm going to Google Maps, looking for a farm, of some sort near me. And let's see if they have pigs. Let's see if they have red wattles. I just think that that's kind of been pushed by the wayside, and for good reason. I mean, maybe the people in charge of the business aspect aren't familiar with it, but there's some easy website platforms out there that can make it very easy to plug and play very quickly, even if you don't even know what SEO means, it's going to prompt you for what to put in that box, to help get your product in front of more people. And without that, you're going to be on page 35 on Google every time.
Well, before we get into websites, which we're going to get into that, folks, stay tuned. I wanted to ask you also about how to use social media in a ethical, in a positive, and effective light. Like, how are you doing that? And what are some problems that you've noticed with other farms that are utilizing social media that can be problematic to what we're doing in terms of conservation, in terms of agriculture that is regenerative? Like, what are some things that you've seen as well?
Yeah, I think depending on what bubble you fit in within your farming industry, right? Within ag, whether it's within pigs or cows or whether it's within a specific breed of pigs. I think the hardest thing that people do, or the worst thing that people can do, is go compare themselves to other farms. I can't get on there and look at A, B, C, D, E, F, G farms and go, wow, I wish I could do that. I've never been able to do that. How did they do that? And just watch and watch and watch and watch. That's not going to do anything for my business, right? I learn from them, and that's why I enjoy interacting with them on social media and following them. But, I really think that people get bogged down with comparison. And I think that as a culture we do in general, social media has created that, right? Whether it's other farms or the way we look as a female or whatever. So, I think it's just important to not compare yourselves and to use it as a tool for gathering more information. I mean, I learned things from other farms. I'm like, oh, wow, we should try it that way, whether it's a feeder for chickens or something, like those are good ideas. And them sharing that helped me kind of, make some changes on our farm. But it's not, it shouldn't be a comparison of, I don't know if you feel demeaning to yourself because after watching someone do it, you should shut it off, like close it out. But I also think the other problem that I see is depending on which kind of bubble or category of animals you're in or what farming practices you use, what, rotational grazing versus not, feeding a certain way versus not, feeding certain grains versus not. I really think that no matter what we do on social media, we need to always encourage other farms to just keep going. We should not be demeaning or put anyone else down for the choices they've made. We've all made choices on what farming practices we want to use. Maybe by, our own process of getting there through. So I'm a first generation farmer. I became a farmer because I was obsessed with nutrition, right? So that's a very different path than someone who's been handed down a generational farm for 3 years and inherited farming practices that their grandparents and great grandparents did. I don't ever want to put those practices down just because they're not the same as mine, right? And I think that consumers see that. They're either going to like you and like your product or they're not, right? They're going to want to watch you and see what you're doing and buy your product, and they're going to either like the taste of it or they don't. So there's no reason for us to compare to other farms or to put other farms down for the things that they're doing and the things that they've put in place. Because at the end of the day, that's not going to get us more business. At the end of the day, what's going to get us more business is being ourselves, being genuine, being authentic, and, sharing our story with the people that want to see it. And then hopefully that train of, eventually they'll hit buy, might happen. And sometimes that takes months for someone to do that. I have customers that told me, I've been following you for 9 months, or whatever. And I'm like, well, that's great. I'm so happy that you're here, and those are the customers you want to find. They're not going to come to you if you're, I don't know, being nasty, talking about other farms in a bad way. So at least I wouldn't as a consumer. I know that much.
have with even my own following is the compulsive need to demonize one particular way of practice to uplift yourself.
Yeah.
Look how good I am. I talk badly about these people so that way I can look good. And then I go to their farms and I'm like, yeah, you're not really any better. But anyways, I digress. Brittany, do we have any questions in the live stream?
We do. Let's see. Christiana says hello. So hello. Thanks for joining us today. We're so glad you're here.
Hi.
Jean also says hello. Hello, Jean. Thanks for joining us today. We're so glad you're here. Jane says, oh my God, she's so happy to see a fellow Texan, Tracy, on here.
I know, Jane.
Hey, Jane.
Yay.
So, small circle, small world. Her now husband used to be one of my farmers that I sold meat from when we had a co-op when I lived in Carrollton 8 years ago. That's crazy.
Wow. It's a small world.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
He raised some good pork. I remember that. That's awesome.
Thanks for joining us today, Jane. We're so glad you're here.
How funny.
Seth says yes to local market. It's so important. Thanks for joining us today, Seth. I don't think we have any actual questions. Just people shouting out and saying that they're here. So if you got questions, let us know.
Yeah. Local market too. I mean, I know some people choose not to sell on the internet like we do, and they choose to go to local, farmers markets, which is, in some places a really fruitful opportunity to take advantage of. We don't have that. We chose kind of early on. That wasn't the strategy we wanted to use. I also have 2 small children, and I just didn't see how that was going to work. At the time, I also had a full-time job. So there was no way I could spend my Saturdays at a market, or I just didn't want to. But for some people, that's a really good way to, get your name to your local community. But it's still important to have a website, even if that's all you're doing. Even if you're just doing person to person, the website's going to get you a lot more calls or a lot more visits. People just inquiring about, what it is you're doing and decide if they want to make a purchase, just like we do. When we're looking for, a new car, we're going to do some research online, and that's super important. If someone's looking to change where they're buying their meat, they got to be able to find you.
Absolutely.
Preach it, Tracy. Preach it. All right. Well, thank you all for the comments and the love. All the love. So we're going to get back into it. So, I met Tracy on my visit back to Texas. I used to live in Waco, Texas, and I had a farmer friend, Farmer Ross, out there, not terribly far away from Waco. And he's like, come on down to the farm and hang out with me and the missus. I was like, okay, all right, I'm coming down. And turns out this guy had, he was going to host like this big food festival, and COVID-19 happened, so he couldn't do all that. But one of the cool things that he did was provide an opportunity for all the people within his network to come together and partake in what was a phenomenal photo shoot of his pork, his beef, the same things that Tracy is selling. So Tracy, kind of talk about, the beauty of not having to do it all, still wanting to produce high quality meat, and also produce and showcase that high quality meat in an ethical way. Your meat, not someone else's meat, not something you found on some stock photo website, but your own actual meat. Tell them how important that is.
Very. I was actually just listing some of Ross's beef on my website this morning, asking him for some of those said photos. And, I have spent, money with a photographer on numerous occasions to get good pictures of our meat. I can take them. I'm a very much of an amateur though. And iPhones and Google phones can do a lot. So you do not have to hire a professional. Sometimes it's just easier. And because it is a process to do a photo shoot. You were there. He had defrosted meat. He had packaged meat. We had cooked meat. We had, you've got to kind of photograph several different versions of that cut.
Vegetables, we cut vegetables, ads, all that. Oh yeah.
We had different platters and different napkins and salt and things like that.
Little spoon.
Yes, the little spoon. They found that spoon, by the way. So, I think it's just important to showcase your product that you have worked so hard for, whether that's a year or 2 years of raising that animal. You've worked hard for the life of that animal, and to come out with a quality product that people will deem, valuable to them, it needs to look pretty. And just like if you're going to go look for a recipe on Pinterest for dinner, you're more likely to cook that meal if the picture's pretty. So if it doesn't look appetizing, you're not going to click on it. You're going to keep scrolling through Pinterest. If that immediate picture looks appetizing and delicious, you're more likely to click on it and see how they cooked it. So same thing with your meat. If you're going to feature, you can make the decision, feature it in package frozen or in package raw, out of the package or cooked. And, at first I had some different thought processes on that. I didn't know if people were ready to see the raw meat, so I was like, let's just do it all cooked, Now I do both. And I think that really helps. It also helps for people to see how I cook the meat. So I do a lot of stories on that on Instagram, but picture wise on the website, I try and also feature, cooked pork chops or pork chops in this certain dish, or, how I use this ground pork in a, Asian inspired bowl versus tacos, and so having people allowing people to see how pretty it can look on a plate, kind of helps, them go, oh yeah, I would totally make that. And they may not make it the same way, or they might not even use your idea. But I try and put recipes on our website too, in order to help people just get some ideas on what to do with the meat. I think especially with pork, it's the underdog. People use beef for everything. And I have to remind them, listen, pork tacos are the best things you'll ever eat, or just mix your pork with the beef. It'll be even better. Meatballs, meatloaf, all the things, right? So when people say they just don't eat much pork, I'm like, well, let me show you how to eat it. Let me show you how to make it. Let me show you what you can do with it. And that's really important for people to see. And those are things that don't take much more effort on my part because we're eating it. So every time I cook, if I'm in the mood, I'll pull out my phone and I start talking about whatever I'm doing, showing people the process, telling them what it is, showing them an end result picture with my phone, nothing special, in order for them to see what it is we're eating for dinner. They love to watch. It's like a little cooking show that lasts 3 minutes or less. And so, those having good photography on your website is important, but also just showing them, how to use your product. And I think one of my goals this year is to start doing more videos like on the grill and showing people like how not to overcook your pork chops and how to do things the way I would like to see, how I like to eat them, just from lessons learned along the way. Right. And that's the other thing that consumers don't know is how to cook differently. Depending on how you raise your meat, may have different cooking methods. Not going to be the same as everything in a big box store. So they need to hear that. They need to know what you're doing or how they need to cook it differently or what they could do with that cut. Because more than anything, they might be afraid of a new cut that they're not familiar with, or just not understanding those differences, and helping them through that is always a good benefit.
Absolutely.
I know even in the event that we were at, we were eating pork chops that I think were like medium rare. Like, it was great.
Yeah.
Great. All you need was some cracked salt, cracked pepper.
That's all we used. Yeah.
You know, but I think, and granted, you hear the slogan, pork the other white meat, and how you have to cook your pork all the way until it's well done. And if you're into that, that's one thing. But when you start eating pork medium rare, it's like, especially high quality heritage pork from our conservation priority list. Check it out. It's like almost like eating steak. You get a steak experience with pork. And it's just the quality, getting better quality pork to have that kind of rich, flavorful experience that you would normally get from a pork chop or from pork found at your regular grocery store. So yeah, you bring up a really good point. I also liked how at that event, I don't think anyone really got paid anything in terms of like being there. Ross was just like, hey, food, you get paid food, and the photographer was taking photos, and the photos you could use, Ross could use, but then also it would help his own portfolio.
Yes.
That's where he showed up. We had a guy who was cooking pork on using coals, using like
fire,
wood, coal, everything, wood coals. I mean, he got photos that were taken that he can use on his website. We all got a good time. You know, you don't have to like cash out a lot of money to have this kind of experience. All you got to do is partner with people who are behind the mission of the farm, and you have that. Ross has that, and so it really made an experience that was more of a community bonding time rather than like, all right, this is transactional
work job. Yeah. It helped to have a group of us there too. The last photo shoot I did, it was my husband and I had a list of everything I wanted to cook. Right. So I wasn't just grilling, I was doing dishes, and some things were on the grill. Some things were we were whipping up and taking a picture of. And I think my list was maybe 15 dishes, and I think we got through 13. He was like, I don't know how we did that. I mean, we've never worked in a restaurant, but it felt like we were in a restaurant. We were like behind you, the whole time, rushing through the house, taking a dish to the photographer. And she had a stager there too. So she kind of helped, make it look good behind the camera. And it's work, but doing that every once in a while with new cuts that you have or with new dishes you want to feature, I think is just helpful, because a lot of times too, people get behind their own camera, whether it's their phone or a real camera that they played with, and they're like, it's just not as good. It's not as good as I'd like it to be. And they nitpick at themselves and they never use it. And you got to start somewhere. So whether it's off of your phone with an editing app like Lightroom, which is free, those kind of tools that you can have even without hiring someone or having friends in the business, it's stuff you can do yourself and just make it look palatable. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it needs to be something that looks appetizing. And if it doesn't, you're like, okay, let's make a different dish. The stew is a little brown, or get online and find some ideas on how to garnish it up. A little green on top goes a long way.
Yeah, even if you're thinking about doing raw meat or even cooked meat, being able to throw in a variety of vegetables, it brightens up your whole photo.
Yes.
Me, Tracy, Ross, we were like arranging pieces of vegetables around the meat.
Bell pepper and that was fun.
Tracy brought her little bowls for the seasoning and the spices.
Yeah.
And it's even if you don't have that artistic mindset, just partnering with someone who does can go a long way.
Yes. And even if that's not you, let's say you are a 58-year-old male who's trying to sell their pork, and that's just not your game. Find a sister, a sister-in-law, a cousin, it doesn't have to be female, but you know what I mean? Find someone who would help you, that a niece, a nephew that is more artistic than you. Fly them in, have them come up for a weekend and feed them well and send them home with some meat, and they'll be glad to do it for you, you know?
Amen. Amen. Yeah. And another thing I want to recommend to people is, you know, I remember a couple of years back on my Instagram, there was somebody who on theirs was posting photos. This goes back to our conversation about the Little Lane Elder Farms. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, well, check out our meat, our pork, and versus, you know, what you find at the store. Like, these guys are horrible. Our pork is better looking. And then I looked at the photos and I was like, I've seen those photos before. Where have I seen those photos before? And then I'm like, okay, looking up, and it was Mega Elite support. So, like, I'm a geek for pork photos. So I've seen it all. So I went back on Google and look, I was like, those are the same photos that I can find on Google. Those aren't even their photos. They're talking about belittling another farmer and saying
they're not even picturing their meat.
They're not even using pictures of their own meat. And I mentioned, hey, you know, I've noticed that these photos aren't your photos. Why don't you show me your own photos?
Yeah.
You know, they got mad. I called them out on it. My whole community was like, what are y'all doing? And they eventually recanted and were like, oh, well, here's what our meat should look like, and no mention of the other farmers. I was like, that's a better way of doing it. You know, but I want to get into, because you mentioned not having to have things be perfect. And I know that can really come into play when a farmer is thinking about building a website. Mm-hmm. So kind of talk about how, you know, starting is better than perfection.
Yeah.
With the websites.
Yes. There are, you know, some great platforms out there that are available to farmers now that are geared towards farms. And they've probably reached out to you, maybe not. They might not have found you if you don't have a website, though. So, but these, you know, other platforms that are available that kind of make it easy. So there's kind of two ways to do it. You can do it yourself, kind of out of the box, which is what we chose to do years ago. And you can also choose to have a helper kind of company that will set it up for you, that is, you know, tailored towards helping farms get their name out there. We use Shopify as a platform. In general, I tell people all the time, it's very easy. They make it very easy to use. Fill in the blank of the name, fill in the price, fill in your description, put in some extra words down here in the SEO box, and you know, get it published. And they make it very simple. And whether you start with just 2 pages and gradually grow that into an about you page and a, you know, about our farm or a blog or recipes or whatever, you can grow into that. I'm still growing into mine. It's never perfect. I'm tweaking things all the time. And when I'm, you know, in the brain space or in the head space to kind of knock out some things, I will. But I think most people are afraid of kind of setting up a website because it seems intimidating. But there are lots of platforms out there for if you want, there are 2 ways to do it. You can either have just a website that has information on it, or you can have a website that's also a retail store, which is an e-commerce website. That's what I chose to do. I wanted people to be able to check out on our website, have the money go to my account. I don't have to worry about moving it somewhere else or whatever, and be able to fulfill those orders and kind of always have a list of what's pending or what needs to be shipped or what have you. So we chose to go e-commerce, and that's worked out really well for us. Yes, it's an expense that we take on every year to have it hosted and to have security on it and have it, you know.
And how much does that cost for y'all on average a year?
I think it's like $400 a year.
Okay.
It's not much. You know, and you can choose to pay that monthly. Some people pay it all at once. There's probably some different tiers. You know, there's different levels too, whether a lot of platforms will say if you're only going to have 3 pages, it can cost you as little as $12.95 a month. And so, there's different ranges there depending on what it is you're going to have on your website. But I feel like most people don't get started on a website because they feel it's just a huge undertaking. And they're like, well, I don't have pictures, or I don't have any idea where to start or what to do. And I just tell people, get your domain, like first, name your farm, register the domain, and then start a website. And there's free ones out there too. I think Wix is still free on some scales, and there's just lots of opportunity out there now. I think 6-year-olds build websites, so if they can do it, we can do it for sure.
Wow, Tracy, I think it's my hope. It's really my hope that what you just said gave relief for people who have been intimidated and scared about doing something that is vitally important to their farm business or farm enterprise. Thank you for just sharing a little bit about that.
Yeah.
All right, so we want to open it up, make sure anyone asks any questions. If not, we're going to keep it rolling, and we got any more questions to go.
We do. We've got some more questions that have come in. Let's see. Oh, wrong one. Hi, Joanna. Thanks for asking a question today. She says, any thoughts on getting product to customers via, she meant to say, sorry, my cat. He's in a mood today. She wants to know if there's any thoughts on getting product to customers via a CSA, is what she meant to say.
Yes.
Real quick, we're going to answer that in a little bit. Hold that question.
Okay.
We're going to get to you.
Okay.
Thank you, Joanna. We'll be right back with it. Charlene says, hi, Tracy. Thanks for tuning in today, Charlene. We're so glad you're with us. Would you talk about how you manage product storage and shipping delivery for online sales?
Yes. This is the thing that no one talks about. Thank you for asking this question.
She works for us, so.
Oh, yeah. So I think there are, I don't know. When you decide to start a farm, you're like, I'm going to sell pork. And you go, okay, now I'm going to sell more pork. And my two stand-up freezers, like you see here behind me, aren't going to be enough because those only hold so many pigs per freezer. You realize very quickly that storage, land is a constraint, but storage is a big constraint for the end product if you're going to retail it directly to the consumer. I will say we've done everything from having these, freezers in the garage to now having them in a insulated building. I have what I call the farm store. It's a 10 by 20 shed. It's not big enough. And it houses 6 freezers right now. I could probably fit 2 more. So, I'm always thinking about that. Our scale for this farm is determined by 2 things: how much can the land, handle, and also how much storage do I have. I think the other capacity problem that farms usually run into in terms of distribution, like shipping and delivery, is not just warehousing the meat, but also how you're going to get it to your freezers. The last time we picked up meat, we rented a freezer truck for the first time. That was an mostly excellent experience. The rental truck broke down 20 minutes from the processor. So I'll just be real with you. And this is the processor that I didn't want to make angry. So I told my husband, you got to get there by 4:30. Whatever you got to do. So that was an experience. But I will say those 2 things, storage at the farm and also logistic storage, freezer storage, getting to and from a processor are our next big hurdles. It's scary to have all of your meat in one freezer. You're putting a lot of value on that one unit. And that has always been nerve-wracking for us. Having a unit that needs maintenance, like a walk-in freezer or something like that, is also, intimidating. Having a vehicle dedicated to just a freezer is intimidating. Those are all very expensive things. I would say for where we are right now, we are just kind of gradually growing our capacity to where we need it to be. I know how many pigs I can fit in these freezers and how many cows I can have, or how much beef and other meats I can hold or house. As my numbers start to grow this year with how many pigs we're processing at a time, this is going to be my next constraint. How many freezers do I need to buy? Where are we going to put them? Does that mean we need to rent freezer space somewhere, which is an option? You might know someone that has restaurants that you can rent spaces from them. And I've seen farms do that as well. A coffee shop in town, or might not have a freezer, but you know what I mean? Find a couple of restaurants that you're friends with, and they have a walk-in, and say, sure, you can have this, 4x10 spot with this rack on it for your meat, and you can pay me X amount of dollars a month to keep it here. Those are all things that we keep thinking of. How do we manage that as the number of heads that we're processing grows, which it is, because we're trying to scale slowly. But that's the key word. We've scaled slowly. So we've been able to manage, can we get freezers? That was a big thing during COVID. How are we going to, oh no, I've got to house how many pigs, and I need 2 new freezers. And on a whim one day, I sent my husband to a appliance shop in town. I'm like, go check out that little place in town and just see if they have anything. They had 2. I said, buy them both. And they said, but they hadn't had freezers in 6 months. And so I was like, because we don't have a big walk-in and I don't have big commercial freezers, the ones that people can get for their homes were few and far between. So that, storage is a big dilemma. Always make sure, just be always thinking, depending on your processing lengths, in between processing, always be thinking, okay, right now, personally, I'm full. I have no room for any more meat. I need to sell it within the next 2 months because I have more meat that's coming up. So that motivates me to go, all right, what are we going to do to get this meat out of here? Because I need it gone, because I've got 11 more pigs coming at the beginning of April. So these freezers have to be empty. And, but scaling, we've not always processed 11 at a time. It was 2, and then it was 4, and then, it was however many we used, however many we scaled up from the very beginning. And then what was the second part? Shipping and delivery for online sales. Yeah, I mean, we also have a storage container, a big cargo shipping container that we purchased. And my shipping supplies take up about a third of that. My husband was just talking about that. He was like, it's a 40-foot container. So a third of that is shipping. And the other 2/3 is feed and some miscellaneous things. But, he was like, should we ship? Because this is just taking up so much room. I'm like, babe, anyone that ships dedicates an entire warehouse to shipping supplies. I mean, our little 10 feet or 12 feet here it's not that bad. It's okay. We can buy another shipping container if we need to. But those work out really well, for any kind of storage on the farm. We don't have a barn. We don't even have a garage. We have a carport. So we needed something that was airtight for shipping supplies that, mice wouldn't get in and out of, and watertight. And they stay fine in there, and they've done really well. So I would say get a shipping container if you can.
Y'all heard it first. Get your shipping container.
Which maybe hard to find too right now, from what I hear. I don't know.
Not for tiny homes, but storage. Y'all hear that? No, and Tracy, and that's one conundrum that I think a lot of people don't understand is they feel the pressure of needing a walk-in freezer without understanding, first of all, it's expensive. Then to keep it running is expensive. Mm-hmm. Your energy bill is going to be atrocious if you have one of those. And correct me on numbers, but if I'm not mistaken, in order to really justify getting a walk-in freezer, you would have had to have a need for like 12 chest freezers.
I think that's right.
Yeah, so all y'all who only got two chest
8, yeah.
or 8.
I've only got 6. I can get 8 in this building, and I'll find a place for a few more.
Also, if you lose all your product, because some people might say, "Oh, well, I'll just buy one that was used," right? But you don't get it inspected. Something happens. Something malfunctions. All of your inventory is gone.
Yes.
I had one farmer in Georgia at Comfort Farms, John Jackson. He had lost a walk-in freezer, and all his inventory, most of his inventory was gone because of that. That put him behind a lot. Luckily, he's a businessman, so he had everything planned out.
Yeah.
He was able to really maneuver very well. But for all y'all who don't even take good records, really consider that chest freezer is your best friend.
It is.
Get more of those before you consider.
If you can. I told my husband at one point, I was like, well, we could put him in the dining room, I guess. He was like, hey, we can come up with something better than that. But you find places to put stuff, I had mine under the carport for a while, and wasn't the best idea, but it worked for a little bit until it got too hot. But definitely think about how much cubic feet you need based on how many animals you're processing, and know that schedule. If you're not going to process a big batch until 8 months from now, and your freezers are full now, you have 8 months to sell it. So sell everything you got and then refill them. We don't like to go without meat to sell. That's been one of our biggest cycle problems we've had, is understanding that gap between processing dates and how quick we want to sell out. And I've kind of done a gambit of things of, okay, I'm going to regulate how much inventory I release every month in order to always have something to sell. Because the worst, I wouldn't say the worst, but a bad thing, in my opinion, to happen is for someone to come to your website over and over and over again and you're out of stock. And it happens to us a lot. We're small scale. I have 50 pigs on the ground right now, but they're not all ready at the same time. So it happens, but we're trying to manage that a little better. And just knowing how long you have in between those dates is one way we do that.
In my opinion, I feel like it is better to have a sale, that's it, sale, we call it a sale, but for us it's non-sale. We're just treating it as a sale. It's better to have a sale on your board to clear out your inventory than to be empty for a month or 2 months or 3 months. Because one thing that, I talk to a lot of integrators, restaurant owners, people who are wanting more heritage pork, but they can't find consistency. Consistency is such a huge issue. And so if you're at a scale where, you're trying to figure out, how to have a good flow, part of it is making sure that you can keep your freezers full just about at all times. Even if it goes down a little bit, it's okay, because you got pigs that are about to get processed next week. Right? So again, that's like master level planning and master level record keeping, master level foresight. It is possible, but you have to put in the work and the effort to making sure that you're running a smooth operation.
And for us,
keep talking, Tracy.
Well, we're talking about heritage breeds, right? So we're talking about a long life cycle. I was making plans last year for what this year's inventory was going to look like, right? Because the pigs on the ground I have right now won't be ready until 2021. So I have 2022. I have 2021 and 2022's game plan on paper, because now I know what that's going to look like, because all the pigs have been born that will be processed in 2021. So you just have to always be looking, however long your life cycle is, that cycle plus one, to really understand where your constraints are going to be. And then knowing I've got to find another freezer by November, I can do that, whatever that means. So you'll know where your constraints will be.
Charlene, that question just opened up a black hole.
That was a good one.
All right, we got any other questions?
All right, we got one more along with similar line. Seth wants to know, how do you manage your inventory for your online store?
You count it. I mean, that's as simple as it gets. I know. So when we bring our meat home, like I said, make a spreadsheet. I have kind of for every batch of pigs that we bring home, they have its own tab in Excel with the date, because that's important. Knowing how many you brought home and on what date, how long they lived, what the cost was to feed them, pretty close, it's high level estimate, probable, I guess, estimate, and then the cost to actually process that set of pigs. So I list all of that inventory, every single pork chop, its own weight. If I got back 300 pounds of whatever sausage, I list that 300 times, so we make a giant spreadsheet of every cut that we brought in. So I understand my cost and I can set my pricing. Then I will, I look at two things. This kind of goes into one of our next topics, but I look one at how many subscription boxes I need to fill between now, when I brought home that meat, and the next time I bring home meat, because I guess I'll go into it. I have a subscription box program where certain customers that decide if they want to receive meat from us on a monthly basis, they've committed to us, we've committed to them. So I fulfill their boxes first. I say they're the first ones to get bacon. They're the first ones to get, pork butts. They're the first ones to get the things that everybody wants. If there's anything left after I've kind of managed on paper, Excel, how many subscribers I have, how many I think I might be attracting over the next few months before the next processing date. I estimate it all. I estimate how many pounds I'm going to need to fulfill each of those subscribers. So if I know that I need 200 pounds for this month and 200 pounds for next month, I make sure that I've got that set aside. I know what it is I'm going to give them. And then whatever's left, I've done it a few ways. You can manage your inventory by saying, okay, I'm going to only, after all, I fulfill my subscribers for the next 2 months, I have 20 pounds of bacon left. And I've got 2 months to sell it. So I'm going to release 10 this month, and I'm going to release 10 next month, so that people think, oh, she's got bacon again. I didn't process anybody new. I just released some more inventory so that we don't always look out, because otherwise I'll look like I never have bacon. People love bacon, obviously. They love certain things, and so those sell out first. So I will regulate my inventory that way. And we, when you have your hands on your food product and it's organized and I don't go back to that spreadsheet and kind of mark off what I sell, but I set my pricing within my website. If I get a range of, let me back this up. If I get a range of sizes in pork butts, and let's say some of them are 4.5 pounds and some of them are 3 pounds, and there's some variety in there, I'll divide those up into kind of two groups and say, all right, medium and large, or whatever you want to call them. And I'll know how many I have of that because I did inventory when I brought that meat home, right? So I know I only have 20 of each. And so I can kind of structure on paper what it is I need to fulfill my subscribers with and how much I have left. And then it's anyone who has a store, whether it's a farm store, a meat store, a clothing store, you always know what your inventory is. You always know, you take the time to count how many packages of bacon you have left. You take the time to count your sausage. You have to. If you don't, and you have subscribers, you may find yourself in a place where you can't fulfill reoccurring orders. And that's not a good place to be. There are ways to mitigate that. Sourcing from other farms is one of them. But knowing that you can fulfill the customers that are committed to you first was really important to us. And then just laying hands on everything, whether that's a once a month schedule for you or once every other month or whatever that may be. I just think it's important to go back and understand, okay, here's what I've got left, and adjust those numbers accordingly.
Woo! Oh, Seth, you have just received gold. I don't hear all these poor people out there in the world. They're not talking about this. So
I think that you have to, if you don't treat it like a real business, you won't be. And any business that has a store has to do inventory. I mean, they pay their employees overtime to stay late and count how many sweatshirts they have left in the back, and when you own your own business, that falls on you. And that's just one of the many hats we wear. We swap the pigs, we build chicken coops, and we do inventory. And marketing, lots of marketing.
Well, Brittany, do you have any more questions?
Just Joanna's about her co-op CSA. So if you want to talk about your CSA.
Yeah, so I feel like Tracy really kind of she just answered that question a little bit. But Tracy, kind of talk about how you're using your meat bots. I'm calling them meat bots. Mm-hmm. I think it's amazing. To be able to really provide high quality meat to an audience that is passionate about what you're doing.
Yeah, so I think there's two different things I want to talk about here. One is the meat box kind of subscription, CSA mentality. The other is kind of where we started as Hillbilly Nutrition. We were a cooperative. We were a co-op. And what we were able to do in that co-op, okay, this was before we were a farm. I wanted really good pork. And so I found a farmer who would sell it to me at wholesale if I bought X amount of dollars worth at once, right? So I personally, for my husband and I, we didn't need however many pounds that was of pork ourselves. So we had formed a co-op of people that also wanted that pork. And so to me, the co-op is collaboratively a group of people is going to or coming to you and saying, we'd like to buy 200 pounds of pork a month. And that could be 10 pounds of this, 10 pounds of that, 50 pounds of this, whatever that may be. And we'd like it a discount because we're buying so much. And as a farmer,
I think because co-op can be used two different ways. The co-op you're talking about is a customer co-op versus like farmer co-ops.
Yes.
So just to clarify, that's what you saw about.
Yes, thank you. So it's a collaborative group of people that have common interests and they want to buy, what you have. And so running the co-op on the other end of the table here, I was running a co-op where I said, Mr. Pig Farmer, I would like to get X from you, every month or every 2 weeks or whatever it was. Mr. Beef Farmer that I sourced, that I believed in, that I loved, and people trusted that opinion from me. So I had a beef farmer, I had a pork farmer, I had a chicken farmer, I had an egg farmer, I had a kombucha guy, I had a honey guy, I had, all these people, and all my friends and their friends and their friends would say, well, I want 2 packages of chicken breasts and a package of bacon and a thing of honey. And I want 5 pounds of ground beef and whatever. So then I could take all that data, spreadsheets, and say, okay, Mr. Chicken Farmer, I need 100 packages of chicken breasts. Mr. Beef Farmer, I need 100 pounds of ground beef and 50 steaks, et cetera, et cetera. And as a group, collaboratively, we would buy in bulk from the farmer. Now I'm on the other side of the table. We don't have the co-op anymore. I'm not organizing it that way. I'm organizing it more like a retail store. So now if someone wanted to come to me as the farmer and say, would you sell us at a discount if we bought 200 pounds a month or whatever it is. Then I can make that decision on whether or not to do so. If I needed to move product, it would be a good reason to do it. But if you're still behind the curveball on inventory levels, it's not like we haven't been there yet. I have not been able to sell a big batch to anyone in a wholesale form like that because I just don't have the numbers. I want to supply. I'm trying to build my retail customer side, business to consumer side, more than trying to fulfill a wholesale order to a group of people or a restaurant or another retailer. So that is one version that you could think about doing. There are co-ops, and they're called consumer co-ops, I guess. They're called that. They exist. There are people out there that want to get their hands on really good meat or local food products, and maybe they've got small kids, or maybe they, can't get out of the house or whatever it is, and they don't want to go to farmers markets, or they just don't know where to go, or they can't drive an hour and a half to go pick up their beef share, right?
Mm-hmm.
There in Dallas, there was a lot of co-ops. So they do exist. Most of them have websites, or they have a Facebook group. Those are a good way to find them. They tend to be a lot of moms that, get together and collaboratively are buying raw milk or raw honey or this or that, and it just kind of grows from there. So if you need to move a bunch of product at once, that's one way to do it. The CSA is another, whether it's a subscription or a, consumer supported agriculture model. We have moved. We're not scaled to be able to sell wholesale, so we have this subscription model that allows us to provide a share, if you will, to a customer that wants to buy it. They can choose to buy a small share, a small box, or what we call a medium box. And those have different price points. They have different weights, that come each month. And so you can buy X amount of meat for X amount of dollars, and you can cancel, skip, all of that anytime. And people do, if they're going to go on vacation or over the holidays, or like, I need to wait until February. I'm like, okay, well, let me just change that. And so we do that. But it helps me know at any time how many people I have coming in the door. And it's pre-negotiated, it's routine, it's reoccurring in revenue, and I can count on it to help pay the feed bill or pay for the new freezer or whatever it is, because obviously with meat, you've already paid all your upfront costs. And so now you just need to move the product to pay for other things. And so it helps with revenue. It's not the a la carte, I'm just going to buy one package of bacon. It's a commitment to say I want to buy 7 or 14 pounds a month from you.
Okay, one more question. All right. So you clearly know how to run a business. And one thing that I try to educate, feel like I haven't done the best job at, is really talking about cash flow management. I know every farm is different. Every farm has certain levels of capital, but just for your farm, just speaking about your farm only, how are you managing cash flow? What does that look like for you?
It started out looking one way, and now it looks a little different. And things kind of morph and change, right? You can, like we talked about, you can have an investor, you can have a mortgage on your farm. Some people do. We didn't have either of those. We did not inherit our farm. We are not multi-generational farm or anything like that. So at first, my husband and I both had full-time jobs and second side jobs. So, he had a real estate business that he had for 15 or 16 years. He was a broker. He still had lots of legacy customers, clients, even once we moved here. We had income streams from other places, and that really helped us get established. I get that question a lot from people who want to start and don't know where to start, and and they see all the things and they're like, all this costs a lot of money. And you say, yes, it does. It's all expensive. Nothing comes for free usually. And so you've got to get creative on, to get started, where those revenue streams are going to come from. And sometimes that's an unconventional method. Sometimes that's an MLM. Sometimes it's a side job. Sometimes it's, something else, selling stuff that you own. I don't know. You figure out ways to bring in money, because every month you have feed bills, especially with pigs. And, you've got to pay those bills and eventually pay a processor. So we got lucky that we had already an established side business, and that helped us out a lot for the first 18 months. Going forward, these subscription boxes, I joke, but it kind of helps me know how much meat I need to have to move, how much I can support. I mean, there's been times when I've closed the subscription boxes and said, I can't take any more until February or whatever. But those help us. They help me understand what my revenue is going to be. If I don't sell anything else, I at least know I've got X amount of dollars coming in that month, and here's how I'm going to make it work. That, from a cash flow perspective has been really huge. I have a business background. Budgets were a big thing. Knowing what you can't understand your cash flow if you don't know what your expenses are going to be. And just laying those out is super important. Knowing, on a month to month, what revenue you're expecting, if that's an average of what you've been getting for the last 6 months, or a similar cycle to what you did last year. You can mirror that and say, I'm going to sell 10% more each month. You can mirror your revenue cycle from last year. You could just count on whatever reoccurring customers you have from those subscription boxes or something like that, in order to say, okay, I know I'm going to make at least this. And that's as if I don't sell anything else. And that won't be the case. You'll sell more, but at least you'll have a baseline, and you can set up your budget that way and just understand, here's what my feed costs are this month versus in 6 months when I have double the amount of animals or whatever that may be. And here's the months that I'm going to process. And I can put in that estimate for each month that those expenses are going to come in. And just knowing what your budget is going to help you know what you have to do to make it in those first couple years. Because I think you told me this, and I've heard it before. Most farms fail in the first 5 years. Yep. So, and that's something that any business fails in the first 5 years. New restaurants, new retail stores, new franchises, they all have that kind of risk level. And, it's work, but it doesn't feel like work if you love it, right? So you know what you got to do to make it work, and you figure out ways to do it. I am the pessimist of the family. I will say that. I sound very positive right now. But my husband is a natural born salesman. And so he's the optimist. When I'm feeling like, I don't know how we're going to do it in 2 months, this is what I'm seeing on paper. And he's like, all right, well, let's break it down. That means you need to do this, or this, and that, A, B, and C, or that only means we got to sell X, Y, Z. And I'm like, when you put it that way, it's good to have someone on your side that can help balance you out, whichever side you tend to lean on. I'm the number cruncher. I'm the one that's, in the weeds of the thick of that. But my husband is the big picture guy. So he sees things very differently than I do. But it works, and it makes it all work together. And that's really important, is to have a partner on your side that can help you through all of that.
And I think if I could even add to that, which by itself, it stands on its own. If I could even add to that, guys, don't be afraid to look at your numbers. I know just the thought of like, am I actually making money? I don't think I'm making money. I don't want to know how much money I'm losing. It's better to not know than to know. I want to say, no, it's not. No, it's not. Don't listen to that lie. That is a lie. It is not. You want to know, and not be overwhelmed by whatever number you end up coming up with, but being able to see, this is where I stand.
Yes.
This is where I stand. Now, let's reverse engineer all this. How much money do I want to make? How much money do I need to make to get out of a hole if you're in the or to just break even for this year and next year?
Okay, this month or whatever.
Or the month, yeah.
And reverse engineering is exactly what my husband does. That's how he solved problems growing up. His ADD brain didn't work linearly like mine does. He works backwards and everything. So it's a perfect match. And, but that is true. You just have to reverse engineer it and think of it in terms of how many pork chops does that mean? How many pigs is that? That's easy. I can sell that. I can sell that, and I just think that, people get intimidated by all the numbers, and I get that, especially if that's not your forte, or if you don't know how to use Excel or something like that. But at the same time, if you don't know the data, it's hard to make decisions for projections. And when you're projecting with heritage breeds a year out or 2 years out for cows, it's you have to know the numbers, and you have to know where you want to be, and to figure out how you can scale up to get there and afford those expenses to get there.
Well, Tracy, you mentioned data, and one thing that I've told people during swine month is that as farmers, you are researchers.
Yeah.
You are scientists. You're talking about data. I'm like, farmers, you are data scientists. Look at those numbers, not be afraid of them. They do not own you. Don't let them own you. You own them, right? It's about how do I have a mindset that's going to acknowledge the challenge and rise above the occasion, rather than suppressing oneself and feeling like I can't amount to what I need to do, what I know I actually can do.
Right.
So, anyways, we're still overtime, and I'm going to get back to work. So, Brittany, would you help us close out on this?
Yes. Do we have time for one more question that came in?
Oh, heck yeah. Go for it.
Sure.
Let's see.
I got time.
Joanna wants to know a little bit more about CSAs. She's curious about partnering with other growers and producers to put together a CSA in order to get a variety of products to the customers.
Okay. So every person, you, me, everybody here on this call, we all have different values that we consider important, right? We all have different purchasing habits. We have different eating habits. We have different things that we find important. When we're talking to farms, we're all similarly minded, but not all the same. Some people, eat differently than we do. And so I think you start out, in order to partner with other growers or producers, you start out looking as if you were the consumer. If I were going to buy beef, here's what I want to see. Here are the things that are important to me, to my family. And now I got to go find that person. I got to work well with that person. I got to trust their values and their experience and their expertise. I've got to be able to talk with them. And partnering with anyone, your processor, your feed mill, any of your other producers out there that you're going to work with, you've got to be able to work with them, right? And you're getting to choose that person. So if you find that you just don't mesh well with that person, and maybe their farming's fine, but there's some kind of communication barrier, they're not your person. But finding people that are willing to work with you, and you guys kind of mesh, and they have a product you would personally buy yourself, that you feel like you could market, that they would be willing to sell at a kind of wholesale rate for a certain baseline or certain amount. That's the homework, we've had to do, or I've had to do myself. And some of those relationships have just kind of evolved, and it might be, this person didn't have what I needed or couldn't supply me with those prices that I'm requiring. But they know somebody who might, talk to this guy or this friend of theirs or whatever. And so those relationships just kind of evolve, and they change. I've worked with a retailer that retailed my meat, I've worked with 2 beef farmers now, or 3, 1 lamb producer that helps us kind of fill in the gaps. Those relationships might change, and that's okay, because we're always looking at it. We're always looking at the data. I know what's moving and what's not. If I don't like the meat, I'm not going to sell it. If I don't like the product, I'm not going to sell it. I can't sell it because then I can't be authentic about it. And so, it's one of those things that I think those partnerships are created because you personally find value in what they're doing. Someone that's making kombucha or, raising bees and has honey or whatever. So then, once you create those relationships, you can decide what to do with that. I've seen people put together boxes that have lots of different things in them, right? They might have on a monthly basis for only local people. They're not shipping, or they're doing delivery or pickups or whatever. They've got an arrangement of different things. Meat, shelf stable items that someone makes, soap or whatever. And all those kind of things that you can buy, at the farmer's market or from these individual producers, it helps them out to move inventory too, if they have it. If they're not able to move it themselves because they don't have the website or they aren't doing the marketing, they would love to sell you $400 worth of soap, so they're just happy about it, even though you can retail it for $600 and make couple $100, and so those are also the different revenue streams that you can look at to help supply, not just to supply your revenue, right? To forecast your revenue is to go, okay, here's the gap I need to fill in July. How much is that? What does that equate to? Oh, okay, well, let me just go purchase this and this and that, and then make my money on whatever I'm selling, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, add to that too. You talked about relationships changing, and I think that's really important that you always have the backup in mind when you're talking with somebody. People change. Some people are like, I've been farming for 15 years. And I think I'm about to get ready to get out business now. Or they go through family issues or divorce, and I don't know what have to land next year. And so being able to have that number 2 option just in case is so important. Even saying like, hey, I'm fulfilling orders for this guy, but I'll take a couple of orders from you too, just so you can move a little bit of product. So then it's not this huge transition to get them into the door shop, but you already have that working relationship anyway. And also looking for people who have integrity. Let me tell you now, if you don't look for integrity, there are people who raise livestock. Again, going back to what you're talking about, Tracy, looking at it from a consumer's perspective. Let's say you're wanting, as a consumer, you want to eat non-GMO fed pork, right? But you're talking with Billy Bob, who's using conventional corn, soy, feed rations, right? And you're talking, it's okay, well, I'm eating non-GMO. I was like, okay, can I see the bags? Where are your bags at? Or can I see the receipt? Let's double check because we're doing business.
Right.
We're able to verify these things, right? So again, no hard feelings. There should be no hard feelings for quality, what you consider quality. If they don't meet it, it's okay. Not a value statement on them. All it means is they don't meet your criteria. You move on, you find someone else who does. And there are plenty of people out there that meet all levels of these criteria, whatever your criteria are.
Definitely. And, whatever values you have as a company, as an individual, as a farmer, as, a producer, your customers are interested in that. And one of our values is that we're transparent. I mean, I'll send you the list of the ingredients from our feed tag. People want to know that though, and especially in our target market. We started from a place of kids with allergies. So there was, foods that we couldn't feed our kids. And it was seriously important for us to see that the animals they were eating didn't have any of those ingredients,
And one of those is like peanuts, right?
Actually, no. It was more along the lines of the processing of food on sausages. There are some meats out there, sausages in particular, that have milk in them, and my girls are dairy free. They have to be, and so and gluten free. But at the same time, it was important for me to know, what's going into that sausage, because that's one of my personal opinions is, on anything smoked, that I want it done a certain way. And so those are the hard questions you have to ask. And, when you're partnering with someone and if they're willing to talk to you about it, then that, that's a check in that box. They're willing to answer those questions, because on the retail side, we get those questions from our customers, and I need to be able to answer those on their behalf in that moment of what that animal was fed or what goes in the processing. I mean, I'm getting a lot of questions right now about aging meat and from our consumers. They're wanting to know how long the animal is hung before it's processed. And that goes into an antihistamine problem that people have right now. It's a histamine intolerance. And the more aged the meat, the higher the histamine level is in the meat. And so I have had 3 of those conversations in the last 3 months from people that have called me randomly off the internet to ask me how long our pigs are hung and how long our beef is hung. And, knowing that about whatever it is you're selling and whatever it is you're producing yourself is important, because those questions come in. I asked those questions as a mom when we started, and, I have customers that ask me all the time about different things like that. So you've got to be able to answer it on any partnership's behalf.
All right. We are 30 minutes over time. You know what?
You knew we could talk.
I only know people who can talk as long as I can, if not more. All right. So we're definitely going to have to close this out. Tracy, how can they get a hold of you? I'm pretty sure you're going to have a slew of emails, DMs, follows on Instagram, but how can people get a hold of you?
Hillbillynutrition.com on everything. On Instagram at Hillbilly Nutrition, on Facebook at Hillbilly Nutrition. My email is tracy@hillbillynutrition.com. So if you Google that name, we should come up. And hopefully we do. If we don't, shoot me an email, let me know. I want to work on that. But yeah, that's how to find me. And I'm always happy to answer any other questions if anyone has any.
Well, thank you, Tracy, for being on here. Again, great wealth of knowledge. You were the perfect fit for Marketing Monday during Swine Month.
Thank you.
You did not disappoint. You not one bit. There was not even a shadow of a doubt. You did a great job. So we appreciate you being on here, Tracy. And guys, if you are loving these chats, we got one more for you. Tomorrow we are going to have Kathy and Seth. We're going to talk about the American Guinea Hog. So be looking forward to that. That's at 2 p.m. All right. Tomorrow. Also, if you're really appreciating this content, please consider donations and even being a Conservation Champion member. What does that mean, Ryan? I've never heard of that. What does that mean? Well, I'm glad you asked. All right. So basically, to be a Conservation Champion, all it is a $4 a month donation. That's it. $4 a month. So 4 times 12 for 12 months is $48 for the whole year. But instead of having to worry about renewing every year, because I know you guys forget. I know. I'm getting the phone calls like, hey, I thought I renewed, and I'm not what happened? So instead of worrying about that, just sign up as a Conservation Champion, and $4 a month will come out of your direct deposit or whatnot. So anyways, Brittany, do you have any other announcements that people should know about or be aware of?
No, I don't think so. Just thank you to Tracy, and thank you to you, and thank you to all of our members who are Conservation Champions and regular members, basic and sustaining. We appreciate you. You help make programs like Swine Chats and Marketing Mondays possible. So y'all are awesome. And if you're not a member, become a Conservation Champion or
Do it.
Like, go to our website. We have swine chat tomorrow, and then we're celebrating sheep in February. So get excited.
Awesome.
And also, we're going to have a Marketing Monday on sheep. It'll be the last Monday of February. So be looking forward to that. And yeah, I think we're done, right?
I think so. So big thanks to everyone, and have a great afternoon and a good week. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Tracy, don't do that.